Live from a bunker in the heart of the Ozarks, a podcast that might just pull a hey boy next week and see how it goes. It's Sif Pop. Welcome to Sif Pop Weekly, streaming live most Saturday mornings. We're available to download later in your podcast feed, unless, of course, you're a patron.
Patrons get perks.
Patrons get those perks.
I said a hip, hop, a hip, hip, hop. You don't stop the rocking.
I'm your host, Aaron Dicer, and why would he carry his podcast notes in a normal backpack when he could use an attaché case? It's Andrew Ormsby, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey.
Each week we'll chat about movies, TV, and whatever else from the pop culture universe is on our minds. And please welcome our guest this week. She'll find out what we make on the podcast when she works on the podcast. It's Alice, ladies and gentlemen.
G'day, g'day.
Alice, don't get your hopes up. I've been doing this 9 years. I still don't know what we make.
What do they make? What is it?
What is it? What do they make? What do they make?
Your dad told me you were funny.
Thank you, Alice, for hanging out with us today to talk some movies and some other stuff. How have you been? How's life? Halfway around the world from us. How's it going down there?
Oh, just hurtling towards the end of the year. It's freaking me out.
Why is it freaking you out?
Oh, just because there's a lot going on, and I have to. Personally, is in terms of that, I'm about to go on a giant overseas Europe trip in a month, and I am like, oh, I need to finish planning and start packing. And also I feel completely betrayed by my Australia, because I'm about to go from winter into winter, and it's meant to be spring to summer right now. And I was like, it's fine. It'll be hot in November to like the couple of weeks of December that I'm here. I'll get my sun, and then I'll go back into like hard winter with snow and cold and awfulness. And then as you can see, I'm literally, for those who are seeing the visual element, but if not, I'm wearing a hoodie right now because it's still cold, and I'm still waking up cold, and this is awful. I am not happy with Australia. We are meant to be known for it being awful and hot, and it has been awful and cold. Anyway, so that's my life right now.
That's why you're like, Melbourne's like southern Australia even, right? Isn't it on like the south coast?
Yeah, which actually means it's cold. It's the colder side of it. Like the further down you get, the colder
closer
it
you
gets.
get to the South Pole.
You know,
yeah, exactly.
Yes, excuse my my north of the equator bias here. Yes, correct. Yeah. You would be on the colder side of Australia. That is correct.
We're close to Antarctica, which is pretty cold from what I understand.
Yeah.
And
there are penguins.
Yes, there are, you know what? There are penguins literally here. We have a beach that
I have one with me now.
No, we have a beach that you go to watch the penguin parade, which I have to say was another time that I was disappointed, because as a child, I thought that meant that the penguins put on a little like parade, like it was choreographed and it was like a whole thing. And then I went. Candy. Well, I just thought it would be like it'd be choreographed or something,
Mm-hmm.
right? It'd be like a parade and they just run up and down the beach. There's no rhyme or reason. It's just penguins living their best life on the beach. So still cute, but just don't
Mhm.
expect like a whole big show.
Well,
Got it.
Alice,
Got it.
I'm in my mid-30s, and as soon as you said a penguin parade, that's the first thing I thought of. I thought that the
Right?
penguins put on a
Yeah.
parade. It
False
only makes
advertising.
sense.
Yeah.
And now I'm disappointed.
Yes. Thank you for ruining our expectations. We appreciate
Yeah.
it.
I mean, it's still cute. They're fairy penguins, so they're little, so it's cute.
Oh,
That is cute.
Yeah.
I so bad want to make it down your way at some point, down to Australia, New Zealand, that area, down to Mordor in the south where you
Yeah.
live.
You
so,
should
yeah.
come. It's great.
Are the penguins
there's lots
poisonous
to do
too?
here. Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, I've been to Mordor, and I've been, because I've been to New Zealand and everything, and we visited all the things, and that was really fun. And then Australia, slowly we're starting to be used as, settings for movies. So like
Nice.
a lot Marvel movies have to be filmed here and other movies. So, also it's fun. Just come. Also, it's actually there's more civilization than you'd think based on popular culture and media.
Yes. Yes.
It's not 98% outback wilderness.
I
with-
know you won't see a kangaroo probably at all in the city. So
Wow. Well, now you ruined one of my reasons for coming. So,
Yeah.
I guess I've changed my mind.
No.
It is always good to have you on, Alice. We are going to talk about Armageddon Time, which is in theaters. Weird, which came out on the Roku channel, of all places. We've got a best ever challenge on best ever movies with the word time in the title. And then, of course, we'll do some buried treasure at the end as well. Let's kick it off by talking about Armageddon Time. A deeply personal story about the strength of family, the complexity of friendship, and the generational pursuit of the American dream. Armageddon Time is another one of those movies coming out in the heart of what we shall call awards season. It is interesting to me to continue to year after year get to November and just be like, oh, now there's a million movies to watch. Like, can we not play the system so much that I have to watch a million movies in a month? Can somebody please spread these out?
especially as we've just had 2 or 3 months where it's like, movies? Hello?
Yes,
Where are you?
echoes. Yes, absolutely.
Your
Anyhow,
life is hard, Aaron.
it is so difficult. Please cry for me, Argentina. This is Armageddon. Armageddon Time stars Anne Hathaway, Jeremy Strong, Anthony Hopkins. I don't think it stars Jessica Chastain. She is in there for a sentence or two. And
With Jessica Chastain.
Yes, with Jessica Chastain. It's the latest from director James Gray. What did you guys think of this very personal coming-of-age tale from James Gray? Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay? Andrew, kick us off.
I think I loved it. I think I loved it.
Oh, all right. Very nice. Alice, what do you got?
It was okay.
It was just okay. All right.
Aaron's?
Yeah.
Allow me to break the tie, shall I? No, I'm actually not going to break the tie. I'm kind of right in between you guys. I'm a very middling liked it. I think I could be talked down by Alice and talked up by Andrew. So this will be interesting and fun. I come away going, I think I liked it, but it's not strong. Not strong in that way. But Andrew, you loved it. So, or you said at least you think you loved it. So what are some things you really loved about it?
Well, I'm either loving it or I'm teetering on really liked it, like so close to loved it, but I don't know if I want to commit. But I'll commit to loved it. I got to start with my biggest pro. Why has Anthony Hopkins decided over these final years? He's like, I'm just going to get some of the greatest performances known to man. It started with The Father, and because the man had been known for so long as Hannibal Lecter, and then like these last few movies that he's done, even including Two Popes, he's just flourished, and these performances that he's been giving over these last few years, have been remarkable. I mean, this isn't as good as The Father, don't get me wrong, but this is a really remarkable performance by Anthony Hopkins here.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, he just hasn't stopped working. That's the thing. Like if you look at his filmography or whatever from 2016 to 2022, he has been in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 movies.
Odin's beard.
He is a working actor. The Two Popes, I think he started a real run of awards performances, like you mentioned with the Two Popes, The Father, and now Armageddon Time.
I'd say even Westworld kind of started that. Like,
ooh,
sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because I think that was right before Two Popes, and that was kind of like, oh yeah, Anthony Hopkins. And he did such a fantastic performance in season 1. He's one of the best parts of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is why it's sad when he cannot come back. But then, yeah, and then after that, because I think also right before that, he'd done a Transformers movie, and then it was like, oh no. And then it's like, oh no, it's okay. It's okay. It was just a blip. It was just a blip. We're fine. We're fine. We're fine.
Everybody's
guys.
okay. Everybody's
He was
okay.
picking up his lunch money. That's all it was.
2012, he played Alfred Hitchcock in the movie Hitchcock. I thought that he was pretty impressive in that.
I didn't see that one, so it is good.
I enjoy it.
As a Hitchcock fan, I loved it. But even if you're not a Hitchcock fan, I think you'll find it interesting. Noah, as much as people don't like that movie, he's incredible in it as Methuselah. So yeah,
I hate that movie.
I also think his Odin is really great.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, he's a really good Odin.
Absolutely.
It's funny because Anthony Hopkins is probably like 5'6", 5'7", and I know that there's some camera magic going on, but he still has the presence and intimidation factor to where like actors like Chris Hemsworth, who are literally built like a god, it seems, can be submissive around him. Like, who's in charge in the room. And that's just talent to pull that off.
Did you know that he is also in a movie this year called The Son that is a sequel to The Father? Did you know this?
Is this a bit, or are you being serious?
No, this is not a bit. This is Florian Zeller's follow-up to The Father. Is called this, unless IMDb is lying to me. Directed by Zeller. It's based on Zeller's stage play of the same name. Serves as a follow-up to 2020's The Father. It stars Hugh Jackman, Laura Dern, Vanessa Kirby, Anthony Hopkins, and others. So wild, very interesting.
Is what's her? I'm having a brain fart here. Sorry.
Hugh Jackman. Yeah, I literally. Is it a sequel?
Is Olivia
it's the
Colman
same guy,
in it?
but... No.
No, it's a different cast. So again, other than Anthony Hopkins.
Interesting. I'll check that one out. Is it out yet, or?
I don't believe so. It's one of the million movies I have to watch by the next month.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. All right, let's get back to Armageddon time.
Rolling because Aaron's got movies to watch.
That's right. Let's get through this, guys. Come on.
Yeah.
I got screeners. I
have to say, sorry, his next film I'm actually really pretty excited for. It's called Freud's Last Session, and he plays Freud with Matthew Goody playing C.S. Lewis. So that looks fun. Really cool. Anyway, I'm
back to Armageddon time.
Yeah, sorry, Armageddon time. What movie?
Yes. What? So Andrew, you loved Hopkins' performance. What else?
I think it's an interesting coming of age tale. Because so many of these coming of age stories, I'm just thinking like Stand By Me, even like some of the lighter movies like Goonies, they kind of put a nice bow on the end of things. And it's interesting to see a coming of age tale that kind of leaves you in suspense and kind of a feeling of concern for all the parties involved in this movie. I'm trying to be as subtle as I can without giving too much away, but it's a way of showing that life doesn't always have to have a nice bow on the end of things. Yeah. And seeing what this young kid Paul gets up to in his life. By the way, the things he does in his life, he would be obliterated for in my household, especially at his age. I say that because I think it's funny. As I was leaving the theater, actually with you.
That's true. We were in the same showing last night.
We were. It was the only showing yesterday.
That's right.
I did hear some people as I was leaving, like, "Oh, wow, his family was kind of rough on him." And I'm like, I thought his family was kind of tame because a lot of the stuff that he was getting away with.
Well, there was, aside from one scene, which was really hard to watch.
The
scene, bathtub scene.
That was light in my household.
I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry.
No. Honestly, trust me. I know I got it a lot easier than a lot of people.
Sure.
But seeing that scene, and maybe it's a spanking scene, and it's what would some consider a violent spanking scene. Others would say, "Oh, that wasn't too bad."
I always consider spanking, as I understand it, and we do not have to or want to get into this conversation right now. But I always consider it on the butt, like maybe that's a swat or a spanking or something like that. When you take your belt off and whip somebody in the face, that is no longer a spanking, in my opinion. So
I didn't see him hitting him in the face.
I don't think it was. I think because he was like,
I thought he was like hitting
him his palm. Yeah,
in the arm or the back or something like that.
Yeah,
the face would have been something a different level. Like I said, we're really getting into a bag of worms that we really. But I'll just maybe expand it more generally. Like the things that this young boy, he's really young to be getting into a lot of the things that he does, but he's. I don't know if he's misinterpreting or misconstruing like some of the beautiful life lessons that Anthony Hopkins is giving him. There's the scene in the park that I think is my favorite scene in the entire movie, where Anthony Hopkins and this young boy Paul, he's just known as he does have a name, Aaron, right? Because most of the time we just see him called Grandpa, but I think that his name is actually Aaron. But when this grandpa and him are launching this rocket, they have this really beautiful, intimate moment talking about standing up for people, and whenever you see something being done wrong, you need to stick up for your friends, and it's a beautiful life lesson. But I love the fact that this movie, as it progresses, makes it evident that that's not always as simple as it seems. Sticking up for a friend who is dealing with racism and a society that has just been totally unkind to him. It's not as simple as always just sticking up for them. Sometimes, life is complicated. And I love that because you rarely see that in a coming of age film.
Yeah, I will go on to say, in addition to Anthony Hopkins, I believe both Jeremy Strong and Anne Hathaway are giving incredible performances.
She's going to win Best Performing or Supporting Actress.
You think so?
You think so?
I think that Anne Hathaway is going to be, well, obviously.
She might get a nomination. I don't know about a win, though.
I haven't seen everything coming out. I'm sure Aaron's seen 30 movies that are.
No, I have a million movies to see in the next month.
Yeah. So, but for right now, of the movies that we have reviewed on this channel, I would say that Anne Hathaway would be the front runner for Best Supporting Actress.
Okay.
And Mark Strong's great too. Oh, he's so good.
Yeah, Jeremy Strong.
You mean Jeremy Strong?
Mark Strong would have been very interesting in that role as well. But yes, Jeremy Strong.
Jeremy Strong, yes, would have been.
Mark Strong gives a really great performance in Tar, by the way. So
maybe that's why I had him.
That's why he was on your mind. So yeah, I think the performances down the line are really good in this. I think the emotion works for the most part because it feels authentic. If you can say one thing about this movie, it feels authentic because it feels so personal. And so everything about this movie feels real, like really, really real. And that's not always easy to do. So I give the movie props for that. What are some of your thoughts, Alice?
Yeah. I fully agree. I think my favorite performance actually in the entire film was Jeremy Strong. I thought his character so easily could have just been, one or two dimensional. And I just think there's so many different layers where, like, in one scene, you're like, oh, you're awful. And then the next scene, you're like, oh, that's, for example, I think it's literally back to back where the dinner scene, he's really domineering and, very strict. But then in the next scene, he's waking up his child in this really like whimsical and lovely way. And I just think, his whole character story was really, really interesting to watch. And just in general, I think that the relationship building and between all the characters was by far my most favorite part. Like, I think that all of them felt really developed. They felt like real people. I didn't think that any of them really were, over the top or unrealistic. Like, I really could latch onto them as characters, and and the relationships between them just was something I love to watch. But I also just wanted to highlight in terms of pros, child actors always can be difficult to find good ones. And I think both Banks Repeater, who played Paul, and Jalen Webb, who played, was it John? Is his name?
Johnny.
No, not Johnny, yeah. Johnny and Paul, I think they were really good. Like, I think there's so much dimension going on with their relationship in particular, where I wasn't quite sure, at any point, there's so many different layers going on beneath their performance and, the building of this friendship and what's happening, but also it against this kind of socio-political climate. I liked how it would, every now and again there'd be this sprinkle of like, oh yeah, it's the real world, isn't it? Because it'd be like Reagan, Trump, and it'd be like, what? And then, but yeah, I really, really enjoyed Banks and Jalen's performances. I think that they have a lot of potential to be really, really great, like have really great careers beyond this. And so that's a couple of my pros for certain, was in the performances and in the character development.
Yeah, it's not easy to get great performances out of kids, and I really think that these performances were really, really good and captured something that's really hard to capture, which is the authenticity of a smart aleck as a kid. Like, even movies where kids do really good at that, I'm thinking of like the kid that was supposed to be a younger Ryan Reynolds in that sci-fi movie.
In Adam Project.
Adam Project, right? Like,
even
he's
going to be
instance,
Percy Jackson.
Yeah.
Sorry,
okay. Well,
I'm
there you go. Well, even in a case like that, you go, oh, that kid's funny. That's good. But it still feels very scripted. It still feels like he's saying jokes like that Ryan Reynolds wrote for him. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In here, it feels like the way kids are smart alecks. You know what I mean? Where it's not even funny or clever. It's just, I'm a kid and I have this thought and I'm going to say this thought and do this thought and I'm getting dumplings. And,
oh my gosh, I can't believe, like, I would have been harsher than his parents. I would have ripped the phone off the wall. That's the bit where I was like, because this is what I mean. I think that it was so well done because as an adult, he frustrated me so much. I was like, awful little child. Like, you would be grounded. You would never be allowed to eat anything except for scrod. Like, it was just so frustrating to watch him, which was what it was supposed to be as an adult.
Yet at the same time, you feel empathy for the familial situation, and you realize that the relationship he has with his grandfather is the purest relationship because it's the only relationship he has with somebody who is meeting him on his own terms. Like, his parents don't meet him on his own terms. His parents are concerned with their lives. They're concerned with, what's going on in what it means to them as a parent that their kid does this, what it means, in those ways. By the way, this is a very natural human tendency. It's not as if that makes them terrible people. It's just he is not being met on his own terms by anybody but his grandfather. And that's why it's so beautiful and why he's able to have actual conversations with his grandfather, because they're having actual conversations where they listen to each other and think about what each other are saying. And he doesn't get that really anywhere else, except maybe Johnny, except for like a friend his age. So yeah, I really thought the movie did that well. I thought it felt very authentically child in those moments.
So where did this movie fall short for you guys?
It's a great question. Alice, you want to start? What are some of your cons?
I got to the end of the film and I understand that it's a deeply personal story. Like, I understand that James Gray clearly, and I read that this is based on a situation that actually happened to him as a
Yeah.
child. And it felt to me, and I mean, I say this as a white female, it
Mhm.
felt to me like white guilt personified in a movie where
Mm.
I understand where it came from, but I just felt like it missed the mark in the way it would explore. It could have explored these themes and the socio-political, situation at the time. I understand that it was trying to limit it to a very personal story, but it just kind of felt like he's been feeling really bad about this for years, and now he's made a movie about how he's felt really bad about this for years. And so there were these, and this is where it fell short for me, was because it felt like it was just always almost touching on some really interesting themes and some really interesting, explorations of character and of story, and it just never quite spent enough time developing it. Like, I feel like, especially with that final situation at the end, and then it just kind of finishes, and I was just like, oh, okay, we're just gonna leave it there. Interesting. And so that's the part that I struggled with the most, because I think that there could have been so much more explored there, and instead I feel like it was severely limited.
I had a lot of this exact same feelings, and it does have a lot to do with the idea of how we are used to how stories are told, how they are resolved, what characters, what protagonists go through. In this movie wasn't as interested in those things. I respect that. I really do. I think it's important for people to be able to tell stories, especially one this personal. And I give this movie a lot of grace. That's why I'm still in the liked it category. I give this movie a lot of grace for being such a personal story. But you are absolutely correct as you watch this movie. If you watch it separated from the idea that this is somebody telling their own story, if you just watch it as a movie, this is a movie that never fully grapples with the things it's trying to put on screen, especially the racial element. It never fully allows us to understand how either Johnny or Paul come through this with a new understanding of what their race means to them, how it gives Paul privilege, how it does the opposite for Johnny. The movie shows us some of those things and shows it to us fairly well, but it doesn't show us how it changes the characters per se. And that is something I longed for. Does it make it wrong or bad that the movie didn't give me something I longed for? No, it just impacts my overall experience watching the movie. I wanted a little bit more from the movie in that regard to you don't have to tie up every loose end, but show me something Paul learned about that final thing and how that changed his life. Now I think it's trying to do that at the dance, but it doesn't. There's nothing. It's all that says to me is he's like, yeah, I don't dig this vibe. That's all that says to me. Like there's no, I don't know.
There's no exploring what that decision was.
Right.
Like he just kind
right.
of, yeah.
Right.
And
it does it in other places too. You have Fred and Marianne Trump show up.
Yeah. Which I was like, hello? Okay.
Donald's parents. And I'm sure they are there because this is part of his true story, that they, came to his school at one point and gave a speech or whatever. But the movie makes such a big deal about them being there and then doesn't really tell us why. Yeah. It doesn't really go into depth about how that impacted Paul in one way or another. I
don't think it's meant for the characters. I think it's meant for us.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Because I think it's like this is the level of school that Paul is at now, where he has speakers come and whether it was an actual family member, the Trumps, who came to his school, James Gray School, whenever he was younger. I think the idea, like you said, is to make the audience aware and to have like a precedent set of what is expected and what are the possibilities of this school. If you have speakers like was she the Attorney General, Mary Trump?
I think so.
That. Yeah. But yeah. So it's meant for us, not for the kids.
See, and I get that. For me, it was also like like going off what you guys have just said. For example, the Reagan element. So I was reading up afterwards as to why it's called Armageddon time was because of the whole Reagan element, and
there's a speech where he gives that phrase. He uses that phrase.
Yeah, and how basically I read that in an interview, James Gray said that it was representative of the fact that when he won, everyone thought that there was going to be, like nuclear war and the apocalypse. And, I think Reagan said at some point that homosexuality was going to be the reason why the world ended. And there was just this constant environment of fear that was, and the fact that he won was, I guess, in a way very similar to maybe when Trump won, and it's like, oh, what does this mean for the world? And I didn't get any of that from the movie as a non-American. I feel like potentially there's a lot missing from my because I know about Reagan and I know about, general things of America, because it's impossible because the Western world has been so Americanized for so long. But no offense, guys. But
we see it too. We don't have.
I apologize. It was my doing. I led a committee to Americanize the world, and I apologize.
Aaron was like, hey, who is that film actor? Reagan? Yeah, let's make him president.
Yes. The president, exactly. Yeah. But I feel like that was so interesting for me to read, later on, where I was like, oh, I didn't feel that in the movie. And I didn't have the context of just understanding, oh, Reagan equals this. Because at least from my perspective and my sort of area of society, I just think of Reagan as like the guy that was really tough on drugs and was really conservative and he used to be an actor. That's pretty much the frame of reference I have. This whole idea of Armageddon and Armageddon time and this whole kind of atmosphere of fear is not something that I automatically knew. And so it's something that I would have loved to have seen explored more beyond the parents being like, these are idiots. So what's the world coming to,
Well, let me tell you, I'm almost on the same page as you, because that's not, I grew up in a conservative home. That was not my experience of the Reagan years either. It was like, I never heard any talk about, Reagan bringing the world to end. He was, as far as I could tell, one of our most loved presidents we've ever had. Like, at least when it was happening, it seemed like everybody loved the guy.
Gorbachev, tear down his wall.
There you go.
So, and having grown up and, seen some other opinions from, and I think rightfully so, based on some of his things that he said and things that he did as president, totally understand. I can see it differently. But this movie, again, throws it out and then doesn't really do anything with it. And it's the title of the movie. So the movie, listen, I actually like this. The movie is asking us to do a lot of the work. It's asking us to just process these things as a slice of life during a slice of time, feel how we want to feel about them, think about how we want to think about them, and go our merry way. I am just too much of a story lover. I'm like, tell me a story. Tell me a story.
Yeah.
And this movie isn't as interested in telling you a story as it is giving you a feel for the reality of this person's life.
Yeah. Not telling a story, showing a moment.
Yeah.
And then you can make a story up from these moments.
Sure.
I think that's...
Do the work.
And I don't, like Aaron said, I don't mind a movie every now and then that asks me to do work or for me to interpret how I see fit or to take the story and imagine how it ends. I like that.
Yeah. And allow me to clarify, it's not like I was thinking a lot about politics when Reagan was president. He got elected when I was 5. And so, that was 5 to 13. Reagan was president during my life. So,
Yeah, and I only caught the last couple years of Reagan. So he was already
wasn't
established.
Alive for any of it. So
yeah.
I think when I was born, there was a Bush. I don't remember.
Yeah. And like Aaron, I did grow up in a Reagan-loving house. So I also didn't have that...
Well, and I don't think, again, I will state, I don't think that's uncommon. I mean, he won in a landslide, like in 84. Like, it was crazy how many electoral votes he got.
That's so interesting because the movie makes me think it was like being, there was a fight and it was a battle, and also a very interesting phrasing that James Gray used in this interview was he said it created generational trauma for children at that time. And so that's when I was like, what are you talking about? I don't know I didn't see this in the movie, and I certainly don't know this from like history, but
well, like Cold War fear was,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Reagan in 1984 got all but 13 of the electoral votes. He only lost Minnesota because it was Mondale's home state. So every state in the United States of America, most people voted for Reagan. So
well, electoral college and people voting are two different things.
Okay, Reagan had 54 million votes. Mondale had 37 million. I mean, it was crazy.
So he won.
Yeah. So
American voting is weird.
It is weird. It is absolutely
I
weird.
agree.
And again, I don't say that to say he was an amazing president. I say that to offer context to you, somebody, who is watching this and going, but I think it's good because certainly there were many homes like this. I mean, there were 37 million people that voted for Mondale. So, that there were millions of homes like this. And I think it's, important to look at it. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
We got a big storm brewing out here, Aaron.
Oh, nice. Well, I hope you keep your electricity.
Yeah, me too. You too. I mean, it's not like you live miles and miles and miles away from me.
I'm in the bunker, so I don't even know what's going on outside.
That's true.
Yeah.
I am.
Final thoughts on Armageddon time. One last thing.
No post-credit scene.
Unfortunately, I wanted one. I wanted more.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
I think I'm ready for a personal coming of age story, not set in the late, 70s, early 80s, and in the, middle class American neighborhood. Like I'm ready for something else.
That would be a boring movie. I imagine.
I present to you Lady Bird. I would present to you Lady Bird and
yes.
others,
so it's
like
just
that.
the female version of that.
It's not the same time period. Lady Bird is not the same time period.
I know it is, but it does feel.
So you're wanting like a '90s kind of coming of age?
Just
like
not
90s
set.
Middle class,
or even just now. Like there's coming of age now is very interesting.
I'll get you a list as somebody who watches a million movies every November. There are definitely more.
I mean, I've seen them. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I've seen plenty. Yeah. I think that for some reason in my mind, this and like Licorice Pizza and a few are quite close together, and like in terms
Sing
of
Street.
recent releases.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Sing Street, that sort of thing.
Don't bring that
which
one up
I have
yet.
to say I do love. That at least does something different. I am also a very, very story-led person, and so whenever it's like it's just things are happening and nothing really happens, I'm always like, oh, okay, yep, good.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No. I was just gonna do my one last thing, but go ahead.
Oh yeah. Before we move on, then I love the fact that this movie does show like the imagination of a kid. Like there's the scenes where like he's having his painting of his
the Guggenheim scene is
at
so
the Guggenheim.
good. Yeah.
It kind of felt like a Christmas Story, where he's like the Guggenheim is his Red Ryder BB gun sort of a thing,
Yeah. I think I would say the police interrogation scene, I think, is the strongest scene in the movie, other than the park bench, which I think is also strong that you mentioned, Andrew. And I really liked Dominic Lombardozzi as the police officer there. I thought that was a really well done performance, and it touched on white privilege, and I thought just exactly the right amount. It had the recipe, I think, more right than even the rest of the movie did on, presenting to us the disparity and what happens in the conversation he has with his dad in the car after that. I thought was really good. So so that would be my one last thing. Yes.
Yeah,
and so is Mark Strong.
So is Mark Strong as well. You're absolutely right. All right, let us move on to the next movie. Guys, let's talk a little bit about Weird. Exploring every facet of Weird Al Yankovic's life, from his meteoric rise to fame with early hits like Eat It and Like a Surgeon, to his torrid celebrity love affairs and famously depraved lifestyle. This biopic takes audiences on a truly unbelievable journey through Yankovic's life and career, from gifted child prodigy to the greatest musical legend of all time. Weird is written and produced by Weird Al with some help from the director of the movie as well. I think worked with some of the writing too, Eric Appel. And Daniel Radcliffe is Weird Al. Evan Rachel Wood comes in as Madonna. Rainn Wilson playing Dr. Demento. Some other people you might know in there with some cameos and some fun performances as well. This is very much a Weird Al movie. And I can't wait to talk about it. Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay? Andrew, kick us off.
I have to give, I'm just going to go and say I beyond loved it. I absolutely loved it. But I don't know if it's my Weird Al bias going into this. Like, just seeing everything that I absolutely love from my childhood being put on screen. But for now, I'm just going to say beyond loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Alice.
I think I'm very close to loved it. I would say I'm just gonna like very, very high end of really, really liked it. I might need a couple of rewatches maybe to end on loved it, but extremely positive feelings all around.
I too don't know how to separate my Weird Al bias from my feelings on this movie. We often talk on Sif Pop. We are not ashamed of our biases. Our biases are a part of what it means to be human. We should accept them. We don't have to apologize for them. I will not apologize for it here. I loved this movie so much. I have been waiting for 40 years since, or 35 years or whatever, since UHF came out for Weird Al to do another movie, and I have not been left wanting. Everything I love about his sense of humor is here. I think it is clever. I think it is audacious. I think it is funny. I think this movie, I want to watch it again right now. I just want to put it on and watch it again, like at this very second. It is such a fun conceit and concept. It's only the way he could do it. When I saw him live in concert with my son, we went and saw the symphony tour. This is where he took a symphony around with him to help him play his songs and stuff, and it was a blast. And there was one part, and I think he's done this on other tours, where he plays a movie trailer for his biopic, and it is this movie. It literally could be a trailer for this movie. It wouldn't surprise me if they put scenes from that fake trailer into this movie on purpose, because it's so perfect. And I just remember watching that and going, I want to see that movie. And guys, I saw that movie. It was amazing. It was so fun. Are you talking
about the original Aaron Paul Funny or Die skit?
It might be, and they may have just played that on the stage during one of the breaks. Yeah,
from what I understand,
absolutely could be.
Yeah, from what I understand, Weird Al did a Funny or Die bit, like a 10-minute bit. And with Aaron Paul playing him, that was kind of, loosely based around the whole Madonna thing going on in this movie. And and then so many people were like, hey, we want a movie of this. We want a movie. And then after 10 years, he's like, fine, I'll make a movie.
Yeah, there you go. That's exactly it. That had to be it. Andrew, you also loved it. What are some of your thoughts?
Well, I just got to let everybody know right now, every single song that came up in this movie, I knew all the words to. So I was like, I was just singing everything. Growing up, I had the Coolio hairstyle cut out for the Amish Paradise. I had an entire life-size cardboard cutout of Weird Al in my room. So just so everybody knows where my biases are. Daniel Radcliffe is so perfect for this.
So good.
He's so good. But before I get to him, my big pro that I have to say about this movie is the fact that this movie knew exactly what it needed to be, because the man for 40 plus years has been doing parodies of famous songs, and now he is doing a parody of famous musical artist biopics. It's so ridiculous, and it's so him. It is so Weird Al.
And that's what saves it too from being a copy of other parodies of biopics we've seen. I mean, Walk Hard is a funny movie. Like you can see some of the same DNA in those two movies, but this is a completely different movie than Walk Hard because it's so completely Weird Al and it's got his sensibilities and it's willing, like the Weird Al thing it really is the embracing of what it means just to be me. Like I find this joke funny. I find this thing funny. I don't have to imitate anybody else's idea of what is cool or what is funny. And you can feel that all over this movie. It's just willing to do whatever it wants and not in a bad way. Like it still feels cohesive. It feels interesting. It never loses you. There's always a laugh around the corner, but there's always something that's drawing you to the next scene. It's really well done in that way. Alice, what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a completely original, 100% not ripped off song, not parody. It's completely original. Oh, sorry, movie, I should say.
I was dying. I was laughing so hard.
Which I will say, yeah, so I really enjoyed it. And I was saying to Aaron before the show, I'm actually not a Weird Al fan in that, like, I'm not a fan. Like I enjoy it. When I've heard it, I've enjoyed it, but I don't listen actively to his stuff. I haven't grown up with it. It's very been in the peripheral of my consuming vision, but I so happen to be involved with one of the biggest Weird Al fans in the entire world, which is my partner, who has made the reason I've heard his songs is because when we go on road trips, sometimes he also gets to pick the music, and he always picks a Weird Al. I think I've listened to Poodle Hat 10 times because of that, and so he knows all the songs and the words, and he's he went to see him in concert too, and he's grown up on Weird Al, and so he was extremely excited for this movie as well. And I think that my watching experience was elevated watching it with him because he could not stop laughing the entire movie, and so I was having a really good time too. But also there was definitely some moments which were funnier if you had Weird Al knowledge, and I didn't, and so he was able to be like, oh, this is really good because the whole eat it beat it joke, because I was like, oh, what? Like I was kind of like, oh, that's funny, but I don't fully get it. And then he explained to me the fact that, Weird Al always asks for permission, and the only person to deny him permission has been Michael Jackson, and hence the joke. And I was like, oh, that makes this so much funnier. And so, yeah, I really, really loved the comedy. I enjoyed the experience. Even it did give me an insight into Weird Al, ironically enough, even though it is totally a true story and not at all not true.
One of the most authentic biopics I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, especially that ending. I was like, yep, that is 100% what's happened, even though Weird Al
I was laughing so hard
in the movie. Exactly. But and then I will also say, to the point of Daniel Radcliffe, I love Daniel Radcliffe as a performer. Obviously, everybody knows my obsession with Harry Potter, but I've just loved his career beyond that because he's gone beyond the not wanting to be typecast. The films he picks, the roles he chooses, he's so good at what he does. Like he's such a fantastic actor, and the way he commits to the role was so amazing to see. And I will also say his workout routine deserves 5 stars in and of itself, because I was like, whoa, you have committed, son.
He got shredded to play Weird Al. I mean, come on.
I know, which makes sense because from what I understand, Weird Al is pretty fit. So again, things I understand from my partner. But yeah, I have to say I really loved the comedy and the cameos. It felt like I was watching a Lonely Island movie from time to time in a good way.
Every single Lonely Island movie or member is in I guess Andy Samberg wasn't.
Andy Samberg, I don't think is in it, but I was. Yeah, that whole scene in the pool, the pool party scene. I was like, because it was awesome. Both from the actors playing, having the cameos, but also who they were portraying. Where I was like,
who was your favorite? Who was your favorite? Who was your favorite combination of actor and who they were playing?
Easily Conan O'Brien as Andy Warhol.
Okay.
Easily Conan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. Jack Black was it was hilarious to me.
I would go with Paul F. Tompkins as Gallagher. I thought that was hilarious. So yeah, but that's the thing.
And then the Roger Deakins.
Yeah. that's
I'm the bass player for Queen. Oh.
It's like,
that's
I
the
would
thing,
love.
like,
We're doing this small show called Live Aid at Wembley. Do you want to join?
Yeah.
Hard pass.
Yes.
Okay, the rest of the podcast will just be us quoting this movie that we've only seen once. How great a sign is that for the movie that you've seen it once and you're already quoting lines from it?
It is so quotable. Like, I just love at the beginning the parents just being like, "We just want you to not do what you love and stop being who you are." It's so good.
Well, you have Emo Phillips, who's playing the Salvador Dali character, who I love that they gave subtitles for. I love seeing him because he's been involved with Weird Al so many times. You know, like he was a big part of UHF.
Yeah, he was in UHF.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen UHF, Alice?
Yes, no, of course I have. Yeah. My partner.
Your brother would, your partner would not allow otherwise.
Not my brother. Definitely not my brother. But yeah, no, he made me watch it a few years ago.
Yeah. So good. Other thoughts. Who wants to go next? Andrew, you got anything else in the chamber?
Okay, so let's break down, because I'm curious, especially from Alice's point of perspective. So I guess instead of me, I'm just going to ask a question to Alice. So there are so many bits of this, like where Aaron and we know what part is parody and what part isn't. Are there parts of this movie where you're like, which of this is true? I mean, you get to the parts like Pablo Escobar and stuff like, and you know that's obviously true.
That didn't
obviously
happen.
true. You know, that's obviously.
I don't think Madonna took over for Pablo Escobar. I mean, it could. I'm not sure.
You're reading the wrong history books, Alice. You're reading the wrong. Let me enlighten you.
Can I also say, Evan Rachel Wood, like, considering I've just been so entrenched in her in Westworld for so long, it's so much fun to watch her just be completely ridiculous in this movie, and I think she does such a great job. Yeah, I mean, again, it was handy to have Toby with me because he was like, "Oh, this actually happened," like with the traveling salesman. Again, I assume certain elements of that were highly exaggerated.
I sure hope so.
I very hope so. And so he'd point out moments here or there. And I do know that this is interesting as well to me. From my perspective, I really, really, really enjoyed this movie. I also, though, learning now, having learned a bit more about Weird Al's actual life, I'd like to actually see a Weird Al biopic because I think he's had a really interesting career. Like an actual one, like the whole record contract element and, you know, the going up. Obviously, I'm talking in like, you know, 50 years once this film's been, you know, played 1.5 million times. But I wasn't really able to separate it. I mean, I could assume that maybe some things felt more real than others, but it was just handy to literally have someone be like, "Oh, this actually happened. Oh, this actually happened." So that was pretty much how I was able to discern.
I loved this movie straight from the beginning.
Yeah.
But the moment where I locked in, I was like, "Oh, it's going to be one of my favorite movies ever." Was the moment he walked into the polka party. And
oh my god!
And they're all just playing polka.
The cops are coming.
It's so good.
Stupid.
It's so good.
The whole movie, I was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen.
And he doesn't care. You know why? Because it's stupid and funny. It's stupid and funny. That's the whole thing. Yeah.
And the photoshopped images at the end. I was like,
not to steal your thunder for your one last thing, Andrew, but I would highly recommend sticking around for the entire credits. There is not only an amazing take on, okay, now the movie's going to show you the real pictures. Amazing take on that. The song, Don't Think You Can Stop Me, by the way, from trying to nominate this song for best song of the year. The Now You Know song that plays at the end is so good and so funny. Stick around for the entirety of the credits. You won't be sorry that you did.
I think the scene that don't get me wrong, I absolutely love the polka party. Like, it was magic on screen. But I think it was the Tom Lennon Toby Huss altercation, and then him sitting down with his mom, who is Julian Nicholson, right? Who played his mom? Loved her in I, Tonya, and she did. I'm trying to think of the other thing she did that I was like, oh, she's amazing. But anyway, where she sits down with him while Tom Lennon is just there is that's when I locked into this movie, and I'm like, okay, this is going to be everything I needed it to be.
Mm-hmm.
So what's really interesting about the Julianne Nicholson performance for me is I just saw her play the serious version of a role like this in the Marilyn Monroe movie in Blonde. She's like the bad mom in Blonde.
Gladys.
And it's so weird to think now she's playing, and again, this is more of the like supportive mom, but you know, the unsupportive dad trope, you know, kind of thing. But just that she was in an actual biopic as a mom this year as well is really interesting to me.
I also love that they just don't age the parents. I just it just like goes from small child to Daniel Radcliffe, and they're exactly the same. And there's just no like pointing out of it or anything like that. Oh, and I mean Rainn Wilson as Dr. Demento. Oh my god, it's just I love Rainn Wilson as an actor, and so like just seeing him and also his whole band, because again that's another thing where Toby's like he's actually had the same band his whole career, and I was like that's really cool because that's super rare as well, and also the fact that one of the band members is the kid from Unbreakable, and I was like different role for you there, mate.
Spencer Clark. He was also in Gladiator too.
Yeah, exactly. And Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I was just like, you're normally a much more serious like character. So it's really nice to just watch them be like, I didn't know you guys could play. Oh, it didn't seem relevant until now. I was just like...
We actually haven't talked about Weird Al in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I mean,
like
the actual
the
Weird Al.
The character. Yeah.
The actual Weird Al. We haven't talked about that he's actually in the movie. And I love that because he has that scene with Tom. Is it no? It's
Will Forte.
Will Forte, who that guy's just one of my favorites. So both of those scenes are great. This movie's great. There's nothing wrong with it. It's absolutely perfect.
Well, that leads me into, do you have any negatives? I guess we'll start with you, Alice, since you were the one that liked it the least. Why do you hate this movie, Alice?
Yeah, why do you hate this movie so much?
I hate it so much. No, look, like I said, if you're not a massive fan of Weird Al, there are definitely some elements you're going to miss. So I highly recommend if you're going to watch it with someone who is, because that'll elevate the experience. I don't think I would have laughed nearly as much if I didn't have Toby next to me. And I did feel, as we were getting, in that sort of third act, that maybe it was like a tad too long. Like it was just I understand you guys might not feel this way, but from my perspective, it was just kind of like, oh, we've still got, a good amount of time left. And I feel like this could have been maybe
not long enough. 3 hours, 4 hours. Let's go.
It's just, especially I think the Madonna element, I was just like, maybe we could have just tighten that a little bit more. But honestly, I didn't like not enjoy it. It just, I felt the time. I hadn't felt the time the entire movie until that sort of area. But that's kind of all I have. It's literally everything else. I had a really good time. It's a really fun time. Like you're gonna have fun watching this one.
Yeah.
The best part is the fact that Weird Al has said he's only met Madonna once backstage at like a VMA Awards, and he said hi to her, and she said, "Oh, you did the like a surgeon," and he's like, yeah. And apparently that's the extent of their relationship. And I
wonder how she feels about this movie. I wonder how Madonna feels about this movie.
I actually am really curious too. Hopefully she has a good sense of humor about it.
Yeah, somebody will seek her out and ask her, surely.
Yeah.
Hopefully. I assume she'll like I feel like she does have a relative sense of humor, so and her character is interesting. Like, it's not, ironically enough, it's not super one note. I think that she has some really interesting turns where you're just like, okay, guess this is where'd the scar come from? Like, it's just so
in the
random.
iPad. Well, actually, the Weird Al bump is a real thing. Like, it's not just like a thing for this movie. It's an actual, like, obviously they make it an extreme in this movie, but the Weird Al bump is an actual thing that people talk about in the music industry. So
Yeah.
That makes sense. Oh, and that's another part I thought was really funny, and it was so random, was when Madonna first sees the news report about the Weird Al bump, and it's showing the albums that have since like gone back up the chart, but then for some reason the Queen album is this awful, like drawing version of the album, but all the other ones are normal albums, and I was like, that's so again, it's so stupid, but it was so funny to me. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that.
You can go back and watch this movie so many times, I imagine, you just pick up different Easter eggs and stuff and things that you'll love.
Yeah, I plan on it.
Yeah, me too. I know what I'm doing tonight. I'm going to watch it again.
Andrew, did you have anything negative in the negative column you wanted to mention?
It's weird. I'm sure that there's things that
it
are
is
wrong
weird.
with
It is very weird. That's
okay. It's strange. But...
No, that's a different movie. That's a Marvel movie.
Dang it! I can't. I'm sure that there are things in this movie that normally I would consider a negative, but considering this movie is trying to be so ridiculous, that's the things that I normally would be upset by are the things that I cherish. So it's difficult, but I can't think of anything right now that I'm like, no, I didn't like that. It's not a perfect movie, but I can't really think of anything right now that's worth mentioning.
Maybe it is a perfect movie. Did you ever stop to consider that? Maybe it is actually a perfect movie. I mean,
it definitely succeeds in doing what it sets out to do.
That's what I was just going to say. It's so hard for me when I fall in love with a movie like this and the movie is so clearly exactly the movie that it wants to be. It's so hard for me to find negative things to say about it because, like you mentioned. Could I talk about maybe some performances that weren't great acting? I guess I could, but they sure work in the scene, whether they're incredible actors or not. Like, so like Conan O'Brien, for instance, he's not a great actor. Like, he's not one of our greatest screen actors of all time, but he sure does work in that scene. So like, funny. I have a hard time. I have a hard time seeing through the Yankovic colored glasses and trying to figure out.
I will say this is the perfect film for Weird Al Yankovic. Like I remember when it was announced and I was talking to Toby about it and he was like, he was really worried about it because he was worried it was going to be an actual biopic and, it was going to tell the story. And he's like, I don't want it to be missing his humor. I want it to be to personify Weird Al, and he was worried it was going to be too serious and not quite right. And so then when I realized that it was going to be what it was, and I told him about it, and that there was also going to be an original song in it, I've never seen a person's eyes light up more. And so I just feel like this is like I said, this is the perfect film for a Weird Al fan. This is a Weird Al movie. It is his story ish in the way he wants to tell it. Like it's Weird Al through and through. If you like Weird Al, you will like this movie. It's as simple as that.
I guess maybe I'd echo something you said, Alice, as possibly a negative, but it's not because the negative would be I want more. But there is a place, as you mentioned, for an actual exploring of things I don't know about Weird Al, like the actual Weird Al. Like there is, and maybe he's saying with this movie, guys, there's really nothing behind the curtain. I'm really boring. Maybe he's saying that, but I don't think you can have the success that he's had. And I think the story can be how boring he is. You know what I mean? Like it's, I think there is possibly something there. And the movie makes a brilliant choice about where it ends. I love how this movie ends. I think it's so stupid and so smart at the same time. Yeah. But there is part of me that's like, no, I want more. No, like we can't end here. I want more. So is that a negative? No, it's actually not. But there is something about
it's
this
more
movie.
Like I like that I have this, and now I would also like the accurate version of it. I want both. Yeah. And maybe that's just more of a documentary of some sort, or limited series documentary or something like that. Maybe there isn't a lot to dramatize. I don't know. But anyhow, that's all I can think of.
I just thought of something I could possibly say as a negative. Possibly,
Scouring
it's
the brain.
The most minor negative of all. I guess I'm just curious, what would it have sounded like if Daniel Radcliffe actually sang the songs?
Yeah. But again, I think that was on purpose, right? Like it was,
Yeah.
I mean,
again,
it's
a parody
definitely
element.
intentional.
Yeah, because
But
he can sing.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
I read
me-
that the reason he got the role was because he sang the Elemental song on Graham Norton, and that's his like party trick. And and then Weird Al saw that interview and was like, "This is the guy who's going to play me," because he, you know, obviously with his polkas and everything, like it's all about that kind of tone. So that makes sense to me. But yeah, I would have liked to maybe he'll perform in like I don't know a concert.
It's not I guess it's not a negative. It's just like a morbid curiosity.
Yeah.
Considering
I loved it every time, Al singing the actual songs came on, because I'm just like, at first I was like, oh, Daniel's not singing them, kind of like you're talking about. And then I was just like, yeah, but of course he's not, because his voice, Weird Al's voice, is a one of one. Like
It really
it's
is.
so distinct. And if Daniel tried to do any kind of impression, it would either have to be part of the joke or it would be very distracting. So yeah. Any final thoughts? I'm said I think everything I need to say. Anybody else have anything they want to say?
Can't wait to watch it again.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Before we head on to our best ever challenge, I do want to thank our Sif Pop members. Thank you for supporting us, being a part of the show and the website through your generosity. It is $3 a month is where it starts. You can check it all out at patreon.com/siftpop. Really, really appreciate those who are joining up and helping out. It means the world to us. If you are a Sif Pop member, don't forget you have, at certain levels, you have your own podcast feed that has not only the main show in it and all the Sif spoils and all that, but also a bonus podcast every week, a members only pre-show. Or most weeks. And this week we talked about Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. Alice and I had a good conversation about that series. So if you're curious about that, or you just want to throw a couple bucks our way because you like what happens here, feel free to do that. Patreon.com/siftpop. All right, let's move on to the best ever time movies. These are best ever movies that have the word time in the title. We'll go number 5 to number 1. Let's start. I'll start actually. With my number 5, I have the movie In Time at number 5. Did anybody else even have that movie anywhere near their list?
Honorable mentions.
Oh, good. So you liked it enough at least to mention it honorably.
Yeah, I think it gets a bad rep.
Yeah, I'm a big concept person. So
yes, exactly. And this movie is, I think, a really interesting concept, and that it plays with that concept well. So. If you're interested in a movie about the idea of a future where everybody just gets a limited amount of time because, mortality is not the same. If you're interested in seeing Justin Timberlake do a performance he's doing here, then
serviceable.
He acts in a movie.
He acts in this movie. Timberlake's performance is a performance ever. It is, it's really.
He says the lines and does the actions.
He's really performance here. Anyhow, In Time I think is better than people give it credit for. So I had it in at number 5.
Yeah, I think it's an instance of world building over substance. The world building in this movie was great, but the actual plot and story was just kind of. But it's such an interesting concept. You're right.
Yeah. An early career Henry Cavill. No, not Henry Cavill. Is it Henry Cavill? Yeah. Am I thinking of someone else? No, it's Matthew something.
No, you're thinking
Ignore me completely. I'm thinking of a different actor. But no, I agree. I'm thinking of
what's his name? Matt Bomer. Bomer?
Matt Bomer. I got.
He does look like Henry Cavill. That's why I knew who you were talking about.
Yeah, but no, I agree. I think that, like I said, I'm a big concept person, and the concept does a lot of the heavy lift here. It's so fascinating, and this is just honestly, sometimes you just need a movie that's fun and like you don't have to think about too much, and you can just enjoy the action and and you can just turn it off and then walk away. And sometimes that's all you need.
Your number 5, Andrew. Why don't you get next?
I am going to go with Once Upon a Time in Mexico.
Trump! Oh, never mind.
Oh, you gotta wait. You gotta wait. There's so many
I was
Once
gonna
Upon
say,
a Time
do you have
movies.
any idea how many Once Upon a Time in movies there are?
Never mind.
Gotta wait for that. You gotta wait for the location.
And trust me, we're gonna mention a lot of them on this list. Let's just say that. But no, Once Upon a Time in Mexico is the third installment in the El Mariachi films. First one was El Mariachi, then Desperado, and then this was the final film. All Robert Rodriguez films, and they all feel so much like Robert Rodriguez, who is kind of Tarantino light, I guess you could call him. But I think these movies are fun. The action is, extreme. The violence is ridiculous. But the characters are so crazy. So you're just in for a roller coaster with any of his movies. And this one doesn't fall short. I think it's entertaining for sure.
Very nice. Alice, what is your number 5?
My number 5 is The Land Before Time.
Oh, nice.
Do you want to talk about
first honorable mention?
Yeah, which, talking about generational trauma. Littlefoot. Oh, it is a movie that traumatized me and also helped me develop character and experience like, oh, why am I feeling these sad emotions about cartoon dinosaurs? But it is, just a really lovely tale. It was just a presence in my life growing up, and I haven't seen it in years because I am scared. Similar to me not wanting to watch The Neverending Story again, where I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can get through the Artax. Yeah, it's that same thing where I'm like, I do want to watch it again, but I don't want to watch it again. Do I want to put myself through it again? Don't I? But no, it's just a really great, like, early, is it 80s or
88
or 90s? Yeah, 80s animation. Great story, great characters, very, 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 very sad. Very
Fun
sad.
fact, the very first movie I ever saw in theaters.
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
What a movie to see in theaters for the first time.
Mama.
Oh, God.
It's amazing. What do you think of Land Before Times 2 through 14?
There was a lot of land before time, man.
There was a lot of land to get through before time started.
It's about time for another one. They haven't made one since 2016.
I was going to say, I'm surprised this one hasn't gotten a reboot. I feel like it's like that perfect sort of, that's not what I'm not saying you should, any executive listening, just leave it alone. It's fine. You can do a different dinosaur movie, but
I think the original one, wasn't it produced by Spielberg? Like there was a whole lot of big names attached to it. Like I think it was a Universal.
Yeah, Spielberg was an executive producer. George Lucas was an executive producer.
Yeah.
Frank Marshall, Kathleen Kennedy were co-executive producers. It was a Don Bluth film. He was famous for those animated films back in the 80s and 90s. So
he did the non-Disney films that were successful.
American Tail, that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
and those are some of my favorites. But good pick, Alice.
Very nicely done.
Aaron,
my number 4.
your number 5. Did you do your number 5?
I sure did. It was in time. My number 4 is No Time to Die.
Same.
Me too. What's that? That's not a Trump, but what is that? That's
I don't know. We should come up with a name for it.
Trifecta.
Yeah, it's the trifecta. All of our number 4s, No Time to Die. I think Daniel Craig went out on a high note. I think this is really good stuff. I'm not saying it's the best Daniel Craig film, but it is, I think, a good one.
Nope.
It's not even the best Craig Bond, but it's a good one.
Well, that's what I meant. I'm sorry. I meant the Daniel Craig Bond film. But it is definitely a good one. And I like the way it ends for what it's worth. I know there are some who don't. I enjoy much about this movie. So, I wanted to mention it here. So there you go. That's what I would have to say about it. It's your 4s as well. So Andrew, what would you have to say about No Time to Die?
I like the fact that this is the first Bond movie that actually ends the way it ends. I'm trying to remember, 61 or 62 is when Dr. No came out, something like that. It took them all the way till 2020 or 2021 to actually commit to that. And I think it humanizes the character in a way that, I mean, Daniel Craig's Bonds have always, separated themselves for the fact that he gets hurt. None of the other Bonds really got hurt. So for them to go the extra mile in this one really adds a level of humanity to the character. Like, he is not immortal, he's human. He can make mistakes and things can happen to him. And it was a beautiful send-off for Daniel Craig's James Bond.
Yeah. What about you, Alice?
Yeah, agreed. I love that the Craig films, at the very least, they all feel like they have stakes to them, and that they're real consequences. And I think this movie does that to the nth degree. I also really like how it took the last movie that didn't have the best reception or wasn't the best in quality, and actually, I feel like it's one of those things where it elevated it because of where this movie went and how it made it more interesting and how the story kind of, closes out. I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did, because the last movie I was like, oh yeah, and I have been enjoying the Craig Bond films, but this one I was glued to the screen. I also think some of the stunts in it, particularly at the beginning with the motorcycle, was just harrowing, where I was like, I would have died so many times if I had attempted these. And so it was really, really exciting and visceral in that way. And also the song, like No Time to Die is a fantastic Bond song. And it was really part of the reason why I started being like, oh, Billie Eilish, hello. Okay, I might actually start listening to you now, because it was very great as a Bond song, but also it was very in style. And it was a really enjoyable experience. I should rewatch that, actually. I might put it on my rewatch list when I have time.
Yeah. All right, on to our number threes.
Yes.
My number 3 is Once Upon a Time in the West.
Trump!
I figured you might.
Trump!
We'll wait and talk about that a little bit later. I figured I'd get trumped on that one. Andrew, what is your number 3?
This might get trumped. Good Time.
No, I've actually I haven't seen this yet.
Neither.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think it's a fascinating movie. I have a feeling it's not
Safdie brothers, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not as anxiety inducing as Uncut Gems, but the stylization is there. And I do think that it's this is where I personally was like, oh, Robert Pattinson's got some acting chops on him. He is great in this. And it's such a confined and intimate story. It's not big and grandiose, but somehow that intimacy makes some of the peril in this movie go to that next level. I think it's interesting. The Safdie brothers do have their own kind of unique stylization for their movies. So if you're not a fan of how Uncut Gems is filmed, or the film grain or any of that cinematography, then you might not appreciate this. But I think it's a great movie.
There you go. That's good time.
Good Time.
Yeah. All right, Alice, your number 3.
Speaking of good time, Bad Times at the El Royale.
Oh, interesting.
Oh
I didn't. Isn't it times plural?
Oh, is that not allowed?
That's
word
fine.
time.
No, we'll count it. I just didn't count them for because I was thinking of the actual word time. Just the word time.
But no, yeah.
I figured plural wasn't. It's not like it's story time. It's
no. You need to understand. You are 100% in the right here.
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Aaron and I are just mad because this would have made our list.
Yes. Yeah. We're jealous.
Okay,
we're very
good.
jealous.
Yeah.
Also,
this
because
movie's
I
amazing.
do have stuff in the honorable mentions, but I didn't want to put those on here, and I prefer this movie because it's very, very good. It is chaotic. It is chaos in a film, and I think it's actually probably got my favorite, or if not my favorite, but one of my favorite Chris Hemsworth performances. I think he is enigmatic and one of the best not Charles Manson, representations. I just love that kind of multi-linear storyline elements. And then obviously this was my first experience watching Cynthia Erivo on screen, and her presence is just, I love the success she's had since this, and I just want to see her continue because she has not just an amazing voice, which yes, because one of the best scenes of the movie is when she's singing and everything's happening around her, but also just her skill as an actor is amazing, and it's just really fun chaos. I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
That scene with her singing
So
while
good.
Dakota Johnson
Dakota Johnson
is on
one.
the other side of the window is you want to yes, she has an amazing voice, but you are so scared during that entire sequence that it's really difficult to pay attention to her.
Yeah,
and this would have been top tier on my list. Not number one, but it would have definitely.
It would have been number one for me if I had put it on the list.
It's been number two. Yeah,
it's so good. Well, it's so very, very good.
All
right, on to our number
Alice,
two.
for reminding me of another movie I'm going to watch tonight.
So good. My number two is About Time.
Trump.
All right, so we'll wait till Alice gets to hers. Andrew, what is your number two?
Just 1 second. About Time. Oh, that's the Donald Gleason movie. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I haven't seen it. Okay. So my number two, this is probably going to be Aaron's number one, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Trump. Oh, wait, no, not Trump.
How can you trump it?
It's not Trump. It's a...
Samesies.
So go ahead. What's your number two, Alice?
Yeah. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's a Trump.
He just wanted to push that.
Right?
He just wanted to push the button again.
Can you do it this way? No, it just
no.
It doesn't. Yeah, no, that doesn't work.
Yeah, no.
You tried to double up echo.
Cut that out, Phil. Cut that out, Phil.
No, leave it in.
So on to my number one, which it's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Hey!
Yeah. Could this be my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie? Is that the truth? I think it might be. I really fell in love with this movie. I fell in love with the what I perceive as optimism. Maybe that's just because Quentin Tarantino's other movies are not as optimistic. He's certainly still the same old Tarantino as far as violence and those kind of things. But I finally think I understand in this movie more than any other why he's doing that and how he's using violence in films. And I think it's because this is one of his time travel movies. And basically what I mean by that is you talk about the idea of what would you do if you could time travel? And the most common answer people give is I'd go back in time and kill Hitler. And Quentin Tarantino was like, okay, let's go.
Movies are time machines.
And I really feel like this was kind of one of those secondary answers. What would you do if you had a time machine? Well, I'd go back in time and change this. And that's a really interesting thing to think about. And I really not only like that concept and where this movie goes, I think Brad Pitt is just astonishing in this movie. I love what he's doing here. Leo's great. Margot Robbie is great. I'm not taking anything away from them. They are both stunning in this. But Brad Pitt just blows me away in this movie. And that ranch scene is as good as anything Hitchcock ever did with tension. It is so good. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this movie. I like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. You guys, did you both have it at number two?
Yeah, so it's obvious it's our winner for the week.
Yeah, but what's some of your thoughts?
I love the subtlety and the nuance that Brad Pitt brings to that performance. But man, Leo is just so charismatic, and he goes for it in this movie, and I absolutely love him for it. The scene where he where he goes in and he starts mentally and verbally beating himself up because he forgot the lines.
Yeah.
And then he goes directly to giving a stellar performance in that one scene. Just that's acting right there. That is acting, because he first has to act bad and then he has to act well. but not act like Leo well. He has to act a different. It's crazy to me that he pulled that off. My big issue with the movie still stems from my thinking that it is a bit too long. That they could have cut out some stuff, specifically the Margot Robbie stuff. Not entirely, obviously, because you need her character, Sharon Tate's character, for the ending of this. But I think that it was just a little too much, and it added to the runtime. But that's my only negative. I adore this movie.
My disagreement with that take is on the record. We do not need to go into it anymore. Alice, what are some of your thoughts on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, I think that it's a weird way to say it, but I think this is almost Tarantino's subtlest film in kind of how it tells the story. I really love Brad Pitt's entire character arc. One of my favorite scenes is because, there's this whole through line with his wife and what happened to her. And then there's the bit that almost acts as an answer where she's just going off and he just looks at the harpoon gun and then it cuts away. One of my favorite moments, because it's that character the whole time. He never really does or says anything obvious. He just kind of it's just hints, and that's why that ranch scene's so amazing, because you can tell there is so much going on beyond the surface, but you never are privy to it beyond what Brad Pitt is showing you. And I really loved his. I thought it was one of his most nuanced and interesting performances I'd seen in a long, long time, and so I was really glad when he won the Oscar, because I was like, it was a perfect supporting performance to DiCaprio's, which I also really loved, especially after The Revenant, where it was just the most depressing, awful, experience. It looked like the experience was just it's good for him because he got an Oscar, but that looked like it would have been hell to do. So him in this movie, then just clearly having the time of his life. It looked like so much fun. I mean, all the different elements he was able to play with the character, with the idea of being an actor, especially in that time. I think that word saying how it's optimistic, Aaron, how you said before, I think that's perfect, because it does feel like, again, a happy quote unquote movie of Tarantino's. And it's just so much fun to watch. Don't get me wrong, I think Glorious Bastards is just as up there for me in terms of a Tarantino flick, but and again, a fantastic performance by Brad Pitt in that one too. But I just think this one makes me feel happier by the end of it, and I really appreciate it for that.
Yeah.
Anybody kills anybody in a fight, they go to jail. It's called manslaughter.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, your number one, Andrew.
This is where I have Once Upon a Time in the West.
Yeah, preach about it.
Oh, I'm going to. It's a Sergio Leone film, and it's a spaghetti western. It's everything I love in this world. I think that the performances in this, especially from Henry Fonda and stuff, it's kind of a performance that you don't really see too many times in a spaghetti western, because a lot of time in these movies you'll get villains who, I'm sorry, my phone's acting all weird. Give me 2 seconds. Trying to pull up my notes here. There we go. Okay. So what I was saying with the Henry Fonda character is, so many times in spaghetti westerns, you get an on the surface villain. It's really evident up front why you hate them. And I love this movie because you understand that you're supposed to be rooting against Henry Fonda, but you don't know why you hate him until the very end, whenever Charles Bronson's character, they just call Harmonica, gives you that reasoning. And I think that Jason Robards, who plays Cheyenne, is stellar in this. It's just such a beautifully told story, and it's right up my alley.
Yep.
Absolutely one of my favorites.
It's good stuff. I'm not a huge Western fan, but when it works, it works. And this is definitely one of those movies that works. So, yeah, that's Once Upon a Time in the West. And I think that leaves us, Alice, with your number one.
That is about time. Yep. In more ways than one. No.
Yep.
I adore this movie. I think it's one of my favorite romantic comedies. I love the love story. I love Donald Gleason. I love Rachel McAdams. I love Bill Nighy and the relationship there between the father and the son.
Yes.
I mean, Richard Curtis, he knows how to make a great love story that isn't, Nicholas Sparks, The Notebook. It's like, it's a nice, very positive with this element of time travel, which is so fun and it's just enough. It's just enough magical realism to add something different to it. But it just gives me warm and fuzzies. And sometimes it is like exactly what I need, especially I'll put this on very often when I'm sick because I'm like, I just want to watch a nice movie with people who have nice lives and where everything ends up happy in the end. And it just always makes me cry from happiness. The music, I mean, the soundtrack again and the score pair perfectly to tell this beautiful story about this, guy just trying to find himself and growing up and falling in love and having kids and at the same time having this strange power. But then what I love about Richard Curtis movies is that all the supporting characters are just as three-dimensional, and whether they're in it for one scene or most of it, they all have their own lives, their own motivations, and it so clearly comes out. It is also, when I watched it recently, I completely forgot Vanessa Kirby was in this film before she was, The Crown and Mission Impossible's Vanessa Kirby, or Pieces of a Woman Vanessa Kirby, and I was like, what? Hello. And so it's so much fun to go back and watch that, especially because at the same time I was in the middle of watching The Patient with Donald Gleason and Steve Carell on Disney Plus. It's a very different Donald Gleason performance.
Aaron just talked about that last week.
I did.
Oh, so good. Yeah, it is just, and so I really love him as an actor. And so this was, I think, one of his first like starring roles as like the lead. And so, yeah, it's great to see, especially because Brendan Gleeson being his father, you're always like, okay, son, let's see how you do. And he's got the talent. I love it so much. It's so good.
It's so good. I had it at number 2. Andrew, you need to get this on your list. Maybe move it up a few notches.
It's on Hulu, so I'll probably number 3 movie I'll watch tonight.
It's conceptually sound. It's interestingly handled, and the emotion works, and that's the key part. The emotion just works in this movie, and it's a great watch. So if you haven't checked out About Time, check it out. I'm
definitely going to check it out for the simple fact that Aaron, above anybody else I know, is very stringent when it comes to how he feels about time travel movies. So whenever I hear him praise a movie that is about time travel, I immediately, bump it up on my list.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk honorable mentions. Alice, what do you got?
I only have 2 others. One is another Rachel McAdams time travel love story, which is the time travel. What a weird niche for her to be in. She's been in 3 now, which is technically, if you count Doctor Strange, I guess 4 technically. The Time Traveler's Wife is one. It is a nice romance. I mean, it's not like my favorite movie in the world, but it is, if you're in the mood for like romance with a capital R with a little bit of time travel, then this is a good one for you, even though it is a little bit problematic with the age gap that happens from time to time. But, they made a whole show about it recently, so clearly people don't care that much. But the second and my more honorable of the mentions is this movie called Timer. Not sure if you guys have seen it or even heard about it, but it is a very indie film that stars Emma Caulfield, who you would recognize from Buffy. She played Anya in Buffy, but also recently she was in WandaVision as Dottie. And it is again, I love a good concept, right? And so this is really where it came from for me. So the concept of the world here is that you're in a world where you have a soulmate, and there's this technology that's been created, and you get a timer implanted into you that tells you how long until you're going to meet the perfect person for you, your soulmate. And so once it's implanted, it'll immediately start counting down. And when it goes off, that next day you are going to meet them, and your implant will go off at the same time as their implant, and you know that you've met your person. And so it's about this woman, and she's had a blank timer at the start of the movie where she's gotten it implanted, but her soulmate hasn't had his implanted yet. And so she's going around desperately trying to find who her soulmate is. And it's a really interesting exploration of relationships and this idea of like true love and soulmates. Because, there are some people who get it implanted and immediately it goes off. And then there are some people who get it implanted and it says that they're not going to meet their soulmate for 35 years. And so they're kind of stuck in this element of limbo. And so it's a really interesting, again, kind of like high concept sci-fi exploration that I do recommend checking out.
Timer.
Yes.
Andrew, what do you got in your honorable mentions?
I only have one that hasn't been mentioned yet, and that's Time Bandits.
Yeah, I had that in mine too. I
Yeah.
had that in mind too.
I mean, that was just a great childhood movie.
Yeah, that's lots of
It's getting
fun.
a remake.
Have to
There's a
mention
remake going?
Taika Waititi.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Oh, I'm excited.
Okay,
Aaron, what you got?
Somewhere in Time, I think, is worth mentioning. That is also a time travel movie. Always stood out to me as a movie because it's all shot on Mackinac Island in Michigan, and I've been up there many times, and that's always their big like, go to the Grand Hotel. It's where Somewhere in Time was shot. So I watched it and I was like, oh, that's really nice. A Time to Kill is the other one I would mention as well. So there you go, some honorable mentions that mention time. On to our buried treasures. What's that one thing in any area of pop culture that you want to make sure somebody knows about? Alice, you will go last because you are our guest. Andrew, kick us off.
Well, I said don't talk about this movie earlier because I was going to talk about it now. It is another coming-of-age film that I think is done to Pontiac perfection, and that would be Sing Street.
Oh, so good.
Let's just be clear. I had no clue this was your buried treasure today.
No,
when I brought
not
up
at
Sing
all.
Street earlier. None at all. That is wild.
Well, I mean, I chose it because it is another coming of age film, so I was rolling the dice that it could have been talked about. But man, I love this movie. Drive It Like You Stole It is one of the best songs ever.
So good.
And that scene is so good because kind of like in Armageddon Time, it's told from the imagination of our protagonist, and you see this childlike wonder of everything working out. And it's this beautiful song of grabbing life and just going with it, and like making it yours. And then as soon as that song ends and he's back in the real auditorium and the kids are giggling and stuff, it's heartbreaking. This movie kind of ends the same way that Armageddon Time does, but I think that the ending in Sing Street is a lot more like hopeful.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But if you think about it, they end the same way. I don't want to get into obviously spoilers for how Armageddon Time ends, but I think that there's an optimism to Sing Street, whereas there is a sense of concern for Armageddon Time. So it's interesting the way that those two stories are told. And just I mentioned Drive It Like You Stole It, but honestly, the entire soundtrack for Sing Street is remarkable. It's so good.
Sing Street looks like is available with ads on several different kinds of channels, including the Roku channel, by the way. If you're watching Weird, you can also watch Sing Street there with ads. If you want it without ads, I think Canopy is the only place to watch it without ads. That is a library service app, I believe, where you can sign in with your library card and watch it. All right, I'll go next. I have started season 2, just started on HBO Max of The White Lotus. And I think The Buried Treasure is the first season of The White Lotus, as well as heading into the second season of White Lotus, because not everybody's watched it. This is I was going to say a whole new cast, but it's not because Jennifer Coolidge is showing up again in the second season. But I do love the idea that we will explore wealth and privilege amongst different families each time. That's really exciting to me. And the show does it so well. Some of those topics can be difficult to kind of navigate, but the show not only navigates the topics well, it does it in a way that feels so authentic, but also just like right on the edge of satire. Like it's like walked up to the cliff edge of the satire ocean, and it's like looking down, and it's feeling the satire breeze off the satire ocean, but still remaining like this authentic show. And I find that really impressive. So Not sure where season 2 is going. Not sure if I'll like it as much as I liked season 1. But Mike White, who does the show, is, I think, a real interesting voice in saying some real interesting things. So I would recommend White Lotus season 1, as well as what I've seen of season 2, which is just the first episode. But I'm enjoying getting to know these new characters, which includes
only 6 episodes.
Yes, yeah, it's a quick breezy watch too. So. So yeah, something to keep in mind. So that's the White Lotus. You can find season 1 and the first episodes of season 2 on HBO Max. Alice, what do you got?
Okay, guys, I have a problem. I have a recent addiction, and I need, when I was like, I'm coming on, I'm going to talk about it because I have to. So last week, I finally got around to watching Heartstopper on Netflix.
Okay.
I only started it last week, and I am currently starting my 7th rewatch of this show. It is. It is.
Come on, that can't be real.
I'm not joking. Okay, let me first of all, it's only 8 episodes, and each episode's only like 25 to 30 minutes. So it's not
sure. So in the course of the week, you've only watched 48 episodes of this show.
Okay, and let me tell you why. Okay, so first of all, it's ironic that Sing Street was your buried treasure, Andrew, because this is also a coming of age story set in the UK, or in the British Isles. So basically, it is about Charlie, who's the boy on the right for those watching visually, and Nick, who they are 2 boys in England. Charlie has been outed, and so everyone in the school knows he's gay. They go to an all boys school, and Nick is the captain, or he's the star player of the rugby team, and they get sat next to each other in like basically homeroom one day, and they meet, and then they slowly start falling for each other. And it's just honestly the nicest thing I have seen in a long time. It is so heartwarming. It is so just wholesome and beautiful. And this is going to sound strange, but it's made me feel young again in a very particular way. You'll remember being in high school and having a crush on someone and being like, oh, do they like me back? I don't know. And those first, that moment of going from meeting them to having a crush to potentially, oh my God, it might end up being more than a crush. And it then developing from there in the most wholesome, cute, like I'm a teenager way. And it made me remember what it's like to have those feelings as someone who's been in a long-term relationship for a long time, in a positive, like I'm very happy and I'm happy I don't have to go through that again.
Somebody who's dragging myself through this long-term relationship.
Oh my
but
God.
Like,
when's this gonna be over?
But like, as someone who's been in that and obviously hasn't been in high school for a long time, it's re-triggered a core memory of being in high school and experiencing these feelings, but again in the positive way. So it's not, what I also really love is that I'm like, this is what high school was like. Like, this isn't like Euphoria or any of these other shows where I'm like, girl, I didn't do any of this stuff in high school. Like, I don't know what worlds these people are living in, but this is a proper representation of what it's like to be a 15 and 16-year-old, just experiencing, who you are and figuring out who you are, because that's obviously a really big part of this show, is the fact that Nick, he assumed he was straight this whole time, but he starts having feelings for Charlie as well. And he has to go through this whole like, who am I? Am I gay? Am I straight? Am I bi? What's going on? And having to deal with all of that while also developing this really beautiful relationship. Honestly, it's so nice to just watch something where everything's nice. You know what I mean? And that's not to say it spurs away from the more dramatic and, there is definitely still homophobia present. There's still, emotional elements and really exploring what it is to be a teenager, especially now with social media. But it's not doing it to the overly dramatic extent. It is real. It feels real. And there's also all the supporting characters in this are also just fantastically developed. I will say it's based on a graphic novel that is also absolutely amazing. And I highly, highly recommend you read it. And
in the last week, she's read it 7 times, the graphic novel. So
no, I've only done it twice, Aaron. Don't be ridiculous. I've also read all the companion novels and the companion books, but it's fine. But the author of the graphic novels is actually the showrunner and the writer of the show, which is why it is so true to it, but it tells it in a way that it did expand on characters beyond what you can do in a graphic novel, which is nice. Other characters in it, there's a girl in it who's trans, and she's recently, come out, and she's finally in an all-girls school. There's also Charlie's friends, and then obviously Nick's friends, and like having to develop them and the dynamic there. And also because it's based on a graphic novel, there's all these, you can see in the poster, there's these little like graphic elements that show up here and there that are really like perfect for representing feelings and emotions when, you know, just to kind of, again, re-trigger these feelings in yourself. And yeah, I can't stop watching it because, ironically, because of it's called Heartstopper, but I can't stop thinking about it and watching it because it is just so, it's already become a comfort watch, and it always makes me feel warm and fuzzy. And again, just like these feelings of like, oh, that's what it was like. I remember now. And it is also just so well made. I will also say Olivia Colman and Stephen Fry are in the cast. So that's also just another positive. So I love it so much. Please watch.
We don't have to watch it.
I just added it to my queue.
We don't have to watch it, Alice. You've probably seen it enough. Why don't you just start performing it? You could just start at episode 1 and just perform it word for word now that you've seen it.
I actually could. And the music, I will also say the music and the soundtrack, like the score and the soundtrack are both amazing as well. Like the score it's very like synthy and very suited to a coming of age story. And then the soundtrack has been perfectly chosen. So it's currently filming season 2, and I'm like, this season 2 needs to come out before, you know, I end up watching this more than 20 times, which I will say, it's not just me. I joined a Facebook group because I was like, I need to talk to someone about this. And there are people on this group who have watched it north of 35 times. So it's not just me.
That's the easiest way to justify your addiction to anything is be like, I'm not as bad as this person. All right, listen, I'm okay because this person is much worse. Exactly.
Anyway, so thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Heartstopper is the name of the show. And did you say that is on Netflix?
Yeah.
Netflix, yes.
Heartstopper's on Netflix. White Lotus is on HBO Max. And Sing Street is on several different places.
Yeah, sorry, I'll just say one of the actors, the guy who plays Charlie's just been cast in Agatha Coven of Chaos. So, and I'm certain Kit Connor is going to be cast soon because he's a very, very rising. He is rising. So
Phil said he's glad you found your support group.
Yes, it's always nice to find people who will support you. Always nice.
Yeah.
Again, that is on Netflix. White Lotus on HBO Max, and Sing Street on several other channels you can watch with ads. There you go. We did it, guys. We managed to do a podcast. We didn't even have to watch everything 7 times in the last week to make it happen. It's pretty impressive. Thanks so much for joining us today for Sif Pop. It is part of the Studio DNA Podcast Network. You can find out more about other shows on the network at studiodna.media or by searching Studio DNA in your podcast player. Huge thanks to Andrew for hanging out again today.
To the rockin' of the bang bang, shoving it up the boogie to the rhythm of the boogie to bed.
Huge thanks to producer Phil for producing the audio and video show.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you to Alice for hanging out with us again today. Alice, where do you want to send people to find you?
Hello. Yes, thank you. So I am obviously also a writer for sifpop.com. My most recent review was for She-Hulk, which I have found that in my reviews lately, I've started going off a little bit with my opinions and being like, you know what do I want to know? Here you go. Here's 800 words. And so, you know, you can read that, and I'll soon have my one-stop pop coming out this month as well. And then on the flip side of that, I have my review channel on YouTube with my close friend, and we recently did a retrospective of The Departed, which I'd never seen before and now have seen. And also we reviewed Don't Worry Darling, which was an extremely interesting discussion. I highly recommend watching it. But that you can find that it's Clean Slate on YouTube. You can find us at Clean Slate Reviews on Instagram. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. Our next one is going to be a top 10 crime films of all time. So stay tuned for that.
Ooh.
Nice. Follow Alice wherever she goes. Always a great read. Always a great listen. Much love and gratitude to our Sif Pop members as well for giving monthly to make Sif Pop a real thing. Support starts at $3 a month. You can find out all the information at Patreon. Patreon.com/SifPop. Lots of ways to connect with us. Feel free to comment, rate, or leave a review at Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen. If you do email, remember that. You can do that at feedback@sifpop.com. And if you want to send us a letter, send it to... No, I'm just kidding. And finally, if you're having a good time, your movie-loving friends will probably like the show too, so make sure you let them know about it and that listening is much easier than surviving ordering dumplings when your mom just made dinner. We will be back next week with a little movie called Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, as well as probably Banshees of Inisherin. I think we'll probably talk about both of those.
All
next
these
week,
indie movies coming out. When am I going to get my big blockbusters?
A million movies I have to watch this month. A million. All right, we'll catch you next week, guys. Bye.
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 Thank you, Video Hanger Outers, Doc and Endgame. I don't know if you're still with us, Endgame, because you mentioned this a while back. Not sure when you'll be able to read this, Aaron, but did you know you are Nostradamus? You predicted the idea and almost the title of Tales of the Jedi back in 2019. I have no idea what you're talking about. I would love to know the episode so I could go back and listen to my predictive skills. So yes, that's interesting. So yeah, I'll have to check that out. Endgame Angel is still here. Says, also, would you ever consider bringing back old bits from the podcast, like Drunk Sif Pop, or Do We Care, or is the podcast
I could
now
bring
just
back
the right...
Drunk Sif Pop.
It's just the right amount of tight as it is. We can throw those in every once in a while. The Sif Pop, the episodes are going long, and so like we don't.
Well, now we're doing 2 movies.
Correct.
Back in the day, we were only doing 1.
Correct. So what has happened is we have decided to review 2 movies every week, and I really like that. Actually, it's one of my favorite things that we decided to do.
Yeah.
Because it allows us to get through so many more of the films that come out in the course of a year. So that is why that kind of took the place of some of those other segments. I'm not opposed to them coming back in one form or another, maybe for a week or whatever. So. Yeah,
I'll just get a big back catalog of content, and I'll just make a whole bunch, and you just whenever you want to throw one in.
Yeah. Skoklego says, finally here for a live show. Didn't know there was more. Well, look, there's more. We talked to the live show afterwards.
Well, wait, there's more.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. I just checked the private chat that we have on the back end here, and Phil's like, yes, Drunk Sif Pop, let's go. Like, all right,
you're welcome to do my little heart stopper rant as a Drunk Sif Pop, because I feel like that would
that might work. That might work. Yeah. Tyler
Either
says
that or Aaron and I fanboying over Weird Al.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tyler
so
says,
good, guys.
Did we just witness history? All 3 had the same number 4? Yeah.
Well, because normally we have like the same number 1. Like if we do a thing, it's like every single one of us has Lord of the Rings or something, But it's kind of unique to have like a number 4 or a number 3 all the same.
Jay Bourgeois says the stuff about Radcliffe getting accordion lessons from Weird Al are great interview moments. So something you might want to check out there. Jay Bourgeois also mentions loving Hopkins and Fracture is a good movie. So there you go. Thank you guys.
Love that guy.
Thanks for hanging out with us. Gotta run. It is Friday night / Saturday morning, and there's stuff to do.
Yes.
Alice, you're
I gotta
actually
go
doing this
continue watching Heartstopper. No.
You're actually doing the show when we usually do the show. You're experiencing what it's usually like for us doing it on Saturday morning.
I feel so awake and alive. It's amazing.
I feel way more awake and alive now than what I do.
All right, guys. Love you all. We'll catch you next time.
Love
Bye.
you.